A spark appeared in the eyes of the dog standing in front of the trash can. His ears perked up, his body tensed, and he began sniffing the air with urgent precision. While hundreds of people in the Riverside shopping mall laughed and chatted, their voices echoing off the high glass ceiling, only Marcus Reed noticed Whisper's changing behavior. The Border Collie's black and white coat seemed to bristle with electricity. "What is it, buddy?" he whispered, his heart tightening in his chest, the familiar cold sweat beginning to form on his brow. The 40-something former Army Ranger felt the burn scars on his skin beneath his blue security uniform. The jagged patterns across his left side had faded from angry red to pale pink over the years, but they still pulled tight when he moved too quickly. Memories flooded his mind, the deafening explosion that had thrown him 20 feet, the screams of his squad members, the metallic smell of blood mixed with desert dust. Afghanistan haunted him daily, but most vividly in moments like this. Marcus had served with the 75th Ranger Regiment for 15 years before the IED changed everything. The military doctors had done their best, but some wounds never fully heal. The physical therapy had been grueling, 18 months of learning to move again, to trust his damaged body. The nightmares still came 3 nights a week. He recognized that particular look in Whisper's intelligent brown eyes. This wasn't just animal instinct or random behavior. This was a warning, refined through years of specialized training and battlefield experience. Whisper had been with the K-9 unit for 4 years before being paired with Marcus. Together, they had cleared more routes and saved more lives than any other team in their battalion. Now, 5 years into civilian life, that training was kicking in again. Marcus tapped the communication device in his ear. "Control, this is Reed. Position E7. Something's wrong." His fingers instinctively moved to the concealed holster at his hip, old habits from deployments where danger always lurked just out of sight. Families were eating near the trash can, children running around with ice cream cones dripping onto the polished floor. A teenage couple shared earbuds, bobbing their heads to music only they could hear. None of them knew how time had stopped, how death was walking among them in plain sight. Only Marcus knew, and Whisper. Marcus Reed was a man in his 40s with deep lines on his face that made him look older. The scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw often drew curious glances, but few had the courage to ask about it. Wearing a navy blue security uniform with a military posture that couldn't be unlearned, he patrolled the shopping mall with Whisper, his border collie. His security company, Sentinel Services, had contracts with 3 major malls in the city, but Riverside was their primary location. Director Sarah Alvarez had hired Marcus personally after meeting him at a veterans employment fair 2 years ago. A former Marine herself, she recognized his hypervigilance not as paranoia, but as an asset. "You see things others don't," she had told him during the interview. "That's exactly what I need." People smiled when they saw the man and his dog now. Some stopped to pet Whisper despite the working dog do not pet vest he wore. Small children pointed excitedly from strollers and shopping carts. "Mom, look, a police dog!" A freckle-faced boy of about 6 exclaimed, tugging at his mother's sleeve. "No, honey, that's a security dog. They keep us safe," she explained patiently, offering Marcus an apologetic smile. He'd heard this exchange hundreds of times since starting this job. Marcus nodded politely at the woman, noting how she pulled her son a little closer. People always seemed to sense something in him, the coiled tension, the readiness for violence that never quite left his body. Marcus smiled slightly in return, but there was emptiness behind it. A hollowness had taken residence in his chest after losing half his squad in that final deployment. His therapist, Dr. Eleanor Wilson, called it survivor's guilt complicated by trauma. Marcus just called it Tuesday. People thought Whisper was just an ordinary security dog trained to sniff out shoplifters or chase down purse snatchers. But he was much more, a veteran like Marcus himself. Whisper had previously served as an elite bomb detection dog, with the 28th Engineer Battalion in Afghanistan. Together with Marcus, they had saved countless lives, clearing routes of IEDs that would have decimated convoys. Now, after Marcus's medical discharge and subsequent retirement from the army, they were living what was supposed to be a quiet life. Or at least, that's how it seemed on paperwork. His ex-wife Charlotte had left 3 years ago, unable to live with the man who had returned from war. "You're here? But you're not really here," she had said, packing the last of her clothes. Their son, Ethan, now 13, visited every other weekend. The boy was the spitting image of Marcus before the war, bright-eyed, quick to laugh. Sometimes it hurt just to look at him. Marcus absent-mindedly felt the burn scars under his jacket, always there like a map of his failure to keep everyone safe. He could never forget the moment of the explosion, the flash of heat, the momentary silence before sound returned with a vengeance. If he hadn't heeded Whisper's warning and pulled back, ordering his men to retreat, he might not be alive. 7 soldiers were injured that day, including Marcus, but no one died. All thanks to Whisper's uncanny ability to sense danger before it struck. Captain Reynolds had recommended them both for commendations, but the paperwork got lost in the bureaucratic shuffle when the base changed command. Some days, recognition was the last thing Marcus wanted anyway. "It'll be a quiet day today, buddy," Marcus whispered, stroking Whisper's head, feeling the soft fur beneath his calloused fingers. The lie was as much for himself as for the dog. They had to check every corner of the sprawling 2-story mall, 179 retail spaces, 6 entrances, and a central food court that could seat 400 people. Management, led by the perpetually nervous Franklin Meyer, had insisted they just be visible. "It's about perception of safety," Meyer had explained during onboarding, his bow tie bobbing as he nodded emphatically. "People need to feel protected, even if—" He'd stopped himself, but Marcus knew what went unsaid. Even if actual protection was secondary to the appearance of it. People felt safer seeing a dog and handler patrolling. It reminded them of airport security, of authority and order, in a world increasingly lacking both. This was a perfect job for Marcus, despite the modest pay. He didn't want to be around people. Their noise, their unpredictability triggered his hypervigilance. But being completely alone wore him down, trapped him with his thoughts and memories. Whisper was both his best friend and his bridge to other people, a conversation starter that allowed brief, manageable social interactions. Officer Danielle Rodriguez, one of the regular beat cops who checked in at the mall daily, often stopped to chat with him. "You two are quite the pair," she'd observed once. "Sometimes I think that dog understands more than most people I talk to." She wasn't wrong. As they finished their patrol of the bustling food court, past the Chinese food counter where Mr. Lee always offered Whisper an unapproved treat, and the smoothie place run by college students who played their music too loud, Whisper suddenly stopped, his paws planted firmly on the tile floor, refusing to move another step. Marcus immediately noticed the change in his body language, the subtle shift from relaxed to combat-ready. The dog's ears were up, rotating slightly to track some sound imperceptible to human ears, his body tense with alertness. Years ago, on dusty roads lined with poppy fields, Marcus had seen the same reaction. It had saved their lives then. What was it saving them from now? "What is it, buddy?" Marcus asked, his voice low and calm despite the adrenaline beginning to pump through his system. Mall security training hadn't covered bomb threats in detail. It focused more on shoplifters and medical emergencies. But Marcus had 15 years of military training to fall back on. Whisper didn't answer. Of course he wouldn't. But his behavior said a lot without words. Whisper had always been exceptional at communicating without making a sound, a talent that had made him invaluable in hostile territory. His nose was sniffing the air methodically, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. Then, with slow and determined steps, he began moving forward, the leash going taut as he led Marcus toward the central plaza, where a large decorative fountain sprayed water in choreographed patterns. Children often threw pennies into it, making wishes that Marcus hoped would come true more often than his own had. Marcus scanned the crowd, looking for anything unusual: unattended bags, nervous behavior, someone watching too intently. Security cameras dotted the ceiling, monitored by Raj Patel in the control room, but cameras missed things that trained human eyes could catch. And they certainly missed things that Whisper's nose could detect. Everything looked normal to the untrained eye. Families eating overpriced pizza and burgers, children running between tables despite parents' half-hearted scolding, teenagers hunched over phones, shoppers resting their feet and heavy bags. The weekend crowd was typical for a Saturday afternoon, busy but not packed. But Whisper's behavior showed he could see, or rather smell, the invisible threat hiding in plain sight. The dog moved with purpose through the crowd, people automatically parting for him as if sensing his mission. He approached a standard-issue black trash can in the middle of the crowded food area, positioned conveniently near the busiest tables. The receptacle was nearly full. The cleaning staff, mostly young immigrants working long hours for minimum wage, struggled to keep up with weekend volumes. Whisper stopped, looked back at Marcus with those intelligent eyes, then turned his attention back to the trash can, sitting down beside it, the trained indicator that he had found his target. Marcus's heart raced, the familiar sensation of combat readiness spreading through his limbs. This particular movement from Whisper, the sit and stare, always meant he had found something significant. In Afghanistan, patrolling the outskirts of Kandahar province, it usually meant a buried explosive, often disguised as everyday objects, discarded tires, abandoned toys, even animal carcasses. "Good boy," said Marcus, trying to keep his voice calm to avoid alarming nearby diners. Whisper remained motionless, having been trained never to touch or disturb potential explosives. Marcus reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder, pressing the talk button. "Control, this is Marcus. We have a situation. Whisper has detected something suspicious. Main plaza, near the central fountain, large black trash can on the north side." He kept his language deliberately vague to avoid causing panic if someone overheard. Mall security used open channels, unlike the encrypted military communications he was accustomed to. A crackling voice came through the radio after a moment's delay, Raj's distinctive Indian accent sounding tenser than usual. "Understood, Marcus. Visual surveillance shows nothing unusual. What kind of threat do you think it is?" Marcus surveyed the area again, calculating distances and potential blast radii based on his training. At least 30 people were sitting at tables within 20 feet of the trash can, children eating ice cream from the nearby Dairy Dream stand, an elderly couple sharing a cinnamon roll, a pregnant woman resting her swollen feet while her toddler colored on a kid's menu. "I don't know specifics," he said honestly, keeping his voice professional. "But Whisper doesn't give false alarms, never has. We need to evacuate this area immediately, establish a 100-foot perimeter, and call in the professionals. Now." He deliberately avoided saying bomb or explosive, but the message was clear to anyone with training. The mall had emergency protocols for everything from fires to active shooters, but they rarely practiced the bomb threat scenario, an oversight Marcus had pointed out in his first week. The man at the control center hesitated. Marcus could almost picture Raj's conflicted expression. Following protocol meant a costly evacuation, but ignoring a potential threat was unthinkable. "Marcus, I need more information to start evacuation protocol. Mr. Meyer is asking for verification before we disrupt business." Of course, Franklin Meyer would be concerned about profit margins even now. Marcus fought back a surge of anger. Memories filled his mind. The blinding flash of the IED that had taken Sergeant Peterson's legs, the screams of civilians caught in the wrong place, the smell of blood mixed with cordite that never quite left his nostrils. He looked at Whisper again. The dog remained perfectly still, ears erect, body tense but controlled, his gaze locked on the trash can. His head was slightly tilted to one side, a quirk he displayed only when absolutely certain of his find. "Put Meyer on," Marcus demanded, his voice dropping to the commanding tone he'd used as a ranger. After a moment of silence, the mall director's reedy voice came through. "Reed, this is Franklin Meyer. Are you absolutely certain this warrants evacuation? Saturday is our highest revenue day and—" Marcus cut him off. "Johnson, Whisper and I found over 100 buried explosives in Afghanistan, 7 Purple Hearts and 4 Bronze Stars between us. If he detected something, it means something's there. Your choice is simple. Evacuate now and maybe face some complaints, or don't and potentially have deaths on your conscience." The harsh reality of his words hung in the air for a moment before Meyer's defeated voice responded. "All right, I'm sending security teams. Initiate Protocol Echo." Marcus nodded to himself. "Protocol Echo, emergency evacuation." "Copy that. Starting evacuation from the center outward." He put down the radio and looked at Whisper, who hadn't moved a muscle. "Good job, buddy," he said, patting the dog's head with genuine pride. "Now let's get these people away from here before they realize what's happening." Throughout their conversation, Marcus had been subtly moving people back, asking them to relocate due to maintenance issues. Now that the evacuation was official, he could be more direct. Behind him, he heard the mall's public address system crackle to life as Raj's voice, carefully controlled, began the announcement. "Attention shoppers, due to a technical issue, we are asking everyone to calmly proceed to the nearest exit." He began approaching the nearest occupied tables, speaking calmly but with unmistakable authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, please pay attention." His military bearing returned fully now, his voice projecting confidence that people instinctively responded to. "For security reasons, I need you to evacuate this area immediately. Please calmly proceed to the nearest exit, following the directions of security personnel." Some people got up immediately, responding to the tone of command in his voice, walking away with worried looks, parents gathering children and belongings with practiced efficiency. Marcus noticed a young couple, barely out of their teens, who instantly grabbed their backpacks and moved quickly toward the exit. Military kids, he guessed, recognizing emergency procedures from living on bases. Others, however, remained stubbornly in place, the evacuate announcement barely registering in their self-absorbed worlds. "What's going on?" asked a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, irritation clear in his voice as he gestured toward his half-eaten meal. "I just got my food, and I have a meeting in 30 minutes. "Security threat," Marcus said briefly, standing tall. "Please leave now. You can exit through the north doors." He pointed toward the nearest exit, where another security guard, young Kevin Martinez, was directing traffic. "This is ridiculous," the man muttered, but gathered his briefcase nonetheless, the seriousness in Marcus's eyes finally registering. An elderly woman with a walker was struggling to stand. Marcus caught the eye of a teenage girl nearby. "Help her, please," he said, and was gratified when she immediately moved to assist, supporting the woman's elbow with surprising gentleness. Slowly, people began clearing the area, a controlled evacuation rather than a panic. Marcus had seen what panic could do to a crowd. The stampede at last year's music festival downtown had left 3 dead and dozens injured. He was determined to prevent that here. Marcus stood near the trash can with Whisper, trying to keep people moving while maintaining a watchful eye on the potential threat. A voice inside, the voice that sometimes kept him awake at 3 a.m. questioning every decision, told him maybe he was wrong, that Whisper might be getting old, that this could all be an embarrassing false alarm. The dog was 9 now, past the typical service age for working canines, but his instincts, honed through firefights and ambushes, knew his partner was still the best. Whisper had never been wrong, not once in 7 years of working together. As the last civilians cleared the immediate area, Marcus saw the mall's other security guards establishing a perimeter with the retractable barrier posts normally used for crowd control during sales events. Not ideal, but better than nothing. A few minutes later, the security team arrived in force. Kevin Martinez and the other regular mall guards, but also several unfamiliar figures in tactical gear. Among them was a man Marcus didn't recognize. Tall, lean, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that somehow marked him as government more clearly than any uniform. His dark eyes were sharp and attentive, missing nothing as he surveyed the scene with professional detachment. "Marcus Reed?" the man asked, extending his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "I'm David Chen, from the Counterterrorism Unit, Department of Homeland Security. I understand you've got a situation." Marcus shook his hand, surprised and immediately suspicious. No one could have responded this quickly to a mall security alert. Chen must have already been nearby. "Counterterrorism? What are you doing here? We just called this in 10 minutes ago." Chen looked around to ensure they weren't overheard, then lowered his voice. "We've been monitoring a situation. We received bomb threats at 3 different malls in the tri-state area over the last 2 weeks. Woodland Park in Harrison, Riverfront in Jefferson City, and Green Valley in Westport. None were real, just threats called in, disrupting business, causing panic." His eyes narrowed. Until now, apparently. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with that familiar pre-mission tension. This wasn't random. Whisper found something. He's never wrong, not once in 7 years. In Afghanistan, we had the highest detection rate in the battalion. Chen nodded, his expression serious. "I believe you. I've seen your dog's records when your name came up in our system. An impressive resume for both of you. 2 tours in Kandahar, 1 in Helmand. The incident near Firebase Echo." He didn't elaborate, but the reference to the classified operation spoke volumes about his clearance level. Marcus felt a chill. He hadn't spoken about Firebase Echo to anyone outside his unit, not even Charlotte during their marriage. The operation had been completely redacted in official reports. Either Chen had very high-level access, or he knew things he shouldn't. "What's your dog indicating?" Chen asked. "All business now." "Classic explosive detection behavior," Marcus replied, watching as Chen's team began setting up more substantial barriers, evacuating nearby stores. "Fixed attention, rigid posture, no barking or pawing at the target. He's military trained. He knows better than to touch a potential device." Chen spoke quietly into a wrist mic, then turned back to Marcus. "Bomb squad's 3 minutes out. My team will handle perimeter control. Stay with your dog. He might pick up something else." Marcus and Whisper stayed in position, maintaining visual on the trash can, while Chen's team evacuated the remaining civilians from adjacent areas. The dog hadn't moved, maintaining his alert posture with the discipline that had made him legendary among the 28th Engineers. Chen crouched beside Marcus, asking detailed questions about what kind of training the dog had undergone. "He was trained at Lackland Air Force Base," Marcus explained, unconsciously standing straighter when discussing his partner's credentials. 15 months of specialized explosive detection training before deployment. He can identify over 30 different explosive compounds by scent, from military-grade C4 to homemade TATP. Marcus felt a surge of pride describing Whisper's abilities to someone who clearly understood their value. Most civilians saw only a cute dog. Chen recognized a highly specialized asset. "He doesn't just find explosives," he continued, stroking the dog's back with genuine affection. "He can also read people's emotions with uncanny accuracy. He immediately notices when someone is tense, scared, or aggressive. Saved us multiple times from ambushes in Afghanistan. He could sense the presence of hostiles before we saw any visual indicators." Chen listened with professional interest, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "That's a very valuable skill set. Dogs process emotional cues humans miss. Micro-expressions, subtle changes in scent from adrenaline or cortisol spikes." He glanced at Whisper with new respect. Does he ever give false positives? Never, Marcus said confidently. Not even during sandstorms that confused other dogs. His focus is absolute. The bomb technicians finally arrived, 3 specialists in heavy protective gear moving with practiced efficiency. Lieutenant Sandra Williams, whose name tape was visible beneath her clear face shield, nodded respectfully to Marcus as her team carefully examined the trash can Whisper had identified. "Military dog?" she asked, recognizing the quality of Whisper's training from his perfect stillness. "Afghanistan, 28th Engineers," Marcus confirmed. Williams nodded. "Then we take this very seriously." While they set up their remote-controlled robot equipped with cameras and sensors, Marcus and Whisper waited at the newly established safe distance, joined by Chen, who was receiving updates through his earpiece. Williams's voice came through the shared communication channel, professional and detached. Preliminary scan shows a package approximately 12 by 8 inches at the bottom of the receptacle, density consistent with explosive material. Thermal imaging shows possible electronic components. Stand by. Minutes that felt like hours passed as the robot extracted the suspicious package and placed it in a containment vessel for closer examination. The bomb squad leader spoke again, her voice tense. Package contains approximately 3 pounds of what appears to be C4 explosive compound connected to a cell phone detonator. Professional job, military-grade components. This is no amateur device. Marcus's throat tightened as the gravity of the situation hit him. Whisper was right. As always, the dog had just saved hundreds of lives, again, and none of the shoppers evacuated would ever know how close they came to tragedy. Chen turned to Marcus, his expression grave but impressed. "Your dog saved thousands of lives today. If this had detonated in a crowded food court..." He left the sentence unfinished, but both men could imagine the carnage. "He's used to it," said Marcus quietly, swallowing the lump in his throat as he scratched behind Whisper's ears. The dog finally relaxed his posture, mission accomplished, leaning slightly against Marcus's leg in that familiar way that always said more clearly than words, "We did it. Together." This brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.